Vanessa arrives at the hotel where Ezra stays. She picked up Calvin on the way for backup. They both get out and head to the lobby. As they're approaching the front desk, Vanessa spots Ezra and Crowley and a man in a black suit near an elevator. Vanessa suggests to Calvin that the man is probably her security. They watch as Ezra walk away and toward the exit again. Vanessa quickly turns her back to avoid being seen. She approaches the desk with Calvin by her side. "Excuse me, I'm meeting a friend and I'm such an airhead. I forgot the room number," Vanessa says.
"Oh, that's no problem. I can't give out the room number, but I'll call," the clerk says.
"Yes, but," Vanessa says. Before she could finish, the clerk is already calling.
"I'm sorry, there's no answer, but you can wait for her here in the lobby." Calvin motions for her to leave. She gives him a look. She shoots the clerk a phony smile and follows Calvin. "What are you doing?" Vanessa says. "I got the room number. I saw him dial," Calvin says. "Brilliant, Calvin," Vanessa says. They both head to the elevator they saw Crowley get on. As they exit, they see Crowley and the man turn a corner, and they rush stealthily to it and hold their position. "There he is," Vanessa says. "I'm betting we should get to him before he goes into that room," Calvin says. "You got a plan?" he asks. Vanessa steps out and reveals herself. "Hey, baby. The gang's waiting downstairs." We gotta go now," Vanessa says, cautiously walking toward him. The man pulls out a gun, and Crowley's eyes grow big. Just then, Calvin steps out. "I wouldn't." "Sigil bullets. No, they won't kill you, but you'll have one hell of a headache, and I know neither one of us wants to cause a disturbance here," Calvin says, aiming at the man. The three of them pause. "Come on, baby," Vanessa says, reaching for Crowley's hand. The three leave quickly. After they're gone, the hotel door opens, and LeBlanc peeks out. "Should we follow?" the man in the black suit says. "I'm sure Miss Neely has it under control. Patience," LeBlanc says. Across town, at Crowley's apartment, Nicki arrives back home. She finds Ezra lurking about. She thinks Crowley and Vanessa are still in the apartment. "Oh, hi. Nicki, right?" Neely says nervously. "I lost my bracelet here, and I was looking for it," Neely says, with an awkward smile. Nicki begins to feel uncomfortable and calls for Crowley. When he doesn't answer, Nicki asks Ezra to leave. Ezra attempts to cast a spell. With glowing eyes, she commands Nicki to go to sleep. "Sleep, child, and may your worst nightmares come to bear," Ezra says. Backing away slowly, Nicki's eyes begin to glow briefly, but she shakes it off and runs into the living room. "Crowley?" Nicki yells. "Oh, he's not here, sweetie. Just us girls," Ezra says psychotically. What Ezra doesn't realize is Ellen is there and tucked away in Crowley's bathroom. "You know, most people would have passed out by now. A powerful girl, undeserving of such power." Nicki begins falling into her trance. "And soon, it will be mine. You should be happy. The spell won't kill you like it did the other one. Audrey, you most likely will end up a vegetable." She notices Nicki's efforts to break her hold. "Oh, don't fight it, sweetie. May your darkest nightmares consume you." Suddenly, the Slayer awakes in a dream. Nicki finds herself near a familiar spot. It seemed more like a memory. Suddenly, she sees a car stopped and a gang of vampires blocking it. She suddenly realizes it's her past. The night she and Crowley met. And also the night her parents were killed. She watched her parents killed by the vampires and immediately began to run towards them. She can't move. Her fear heightened as she watched her parents get up as vampires and look directly at her. With menacing eyes and laughing, they began walking towards her. Crowley appears to her left. "Crowley!" she yells. "Don't look at me to save you this time. You should have died that night," Crowley says. "No," Nicki says. "Yes," her vampire mom says. "If it wasn't for you, we'd still be alive. I should have never birthed you," she says. "I told her to get rid of you even after you were born. All it would have taken was a quick deposit into the East River, and bye-bye troubles," her dad says. "No, Mom, please," Nicki says. "There she goes again," Crowley says. Crowley grabs her and she screams. "No, this isn't real," Nicki says. "Isn't it?" her mom says, laughing. After Nicki says that, she's able to move and scurries down a dark street. Ezra appears abruptly. "Still fighting? There's nowhere to go. There's no one left to love you," she says. Nicki's eyes shift to see a woman in the distance. The woman stares at Nicki. "I control this world, and you're not leaving it until you're broken. And then the transfer of power will be effortless," Ezra says, moving towards the Slayer. Nicki swings at Ezra, and she becomes transparent. She runs through and past Ezra, and even past the alley where she saw the woman. But the woman yells the Slayer's name. The Slayer turns around, and her fear decreased as she saw this woman with a familiar voice. Instinctively, she knew it wasn't a trap. The woman was bathed in a soft, white light. "Ellen," she says, relieved. "Come here, baby. I heard her. Don't listen to her. You hear me? No, I can't help you. This is your mind. You control this world, not her," Ellen says. "How?" Nicki says, desperately. "Where are we?" she says. "It's a dream, baby, and you're in control," Ellen says, fading out. Ezra appears abruptly again. "This isn't real," the Slayer says, and runs directly toward Ezra. Nicki immediately wakes up, and Ellen scurries her out of the room before nearly woke up. "Good, baby. Real good. Go," Ellen says. Suddenly, Neely wakes up and realizes she's magically bound to the chair. "Who are you? And what were you doing to that child? Walking around here possessing some poor old white lady. Did you kill her too? What were you doing to that little girl?" "Baby, if I were you, I would start talking," Ellen says. In that moment, Vanessa and Crowley arrive to find Ezra and Ellen in the living room. "How could you?" Crowley barks, rushing in. "He was so enthusiastic about seeing you again. I didn't want to disappoint," Ezra says with an evil grin. "This is not your friend," Ellen says. "What do you mean?" Crowley says. "She's possessed. I don't know her, but I know something attached to her is very ancient and very dark," Ellen says. "Back home, we called it a monitoring spirit." "What?" Vanessa says. "Yes, it stalks and terrorizes its victims to obtain something, whatever," Ellen continues. "What do you want? Why are you here?" Crowley says to Ezra. "Power," Ezra says, staring at the Slayer. What do we do with her? Vanessa says. I only dabbled in exorcism. I don't know enough to save her, if that's even an option, Crowley says. Of course. Crowley, the most powerful hunter in these parts. Never was one for the dark magic research, though. Coward, and you'll die by it, Ezra says, rising to her feet. I beg to differ, Ellen says, pushing her back down into her chair. Who are you working for? Who wanted to meet me? Crowley says. Ezra becomes lucid. Bernard? I did it, Ezra says. What's going on? Nicki says. She's herself again. I guess the demon got tired, Ellen says. Ezra? Crowley questions, moving closer. Is it you? Crowley says. The others look on intently. The entity, it preyed on Audrey. She couldn't possess a slayer, so she possessed me and had me lead Audrey to a cabin somewhere. And she tried to get into her head somehow. I wasn't awake for most of it. There's a man, LeBlanc. She gave him instructions. About a ring? Ezra says, anxiously. A ring. Amara, Crowley says. Yes, Ezra says, hurriedly. Ezra begins striving in pain and settles down. Everyone looks on curiously. The room has an eerie silence. Only the cars outside can be heard. Do you know where it is? Crowley says. Ezra's head is buried in her chest, but she lifts it slowly. Yep, and you'll never get it, she says, laughing with a grin. Ezra lifts her hand to telekinetically launch a random arrow she saw into her chest. Everyone gasps as Neely's body slumps over. A dark entity emerges from her limp body, and everyone backs away, except Ellen. It hovers briefly and seemingly looks at the Slayer. It then looks at Ellen and evaporates out of the window. Crowley pulls Nicki to his side. You okay? He asks. You mean she was possessed the whole time? Nicki says. Yes, but you're safe now, Nicki. The Slayer is never alone. I'll always be by your side, Crowley says, hugging Nicki.